Hey guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. I'm Gene Del Sal, I'm president of Audioholics, and today we have
Hugo Rivera, Vice President of Marketing. How you doing today, Gene?
Hugo. Great as always, my friend. Just waiting to cover new products with you.
Wonderful. I see we have a Tribble kind of on top of an amplifier over here.
Yeah, the Tribble's like warm heat, and the amplifier provides just enough ambient temperature for him to be comfortable.
Nice. What can you tell us about that amp?
Well, guys, we're happy to say we have the exclusivity here on the new model 5000 from Outlaw. It's their 5-channel amp, and the retail on it is a shocking $699.
Wow, that is cheap.
That is very cheap. Traditionally Outlaw, there's really, when you think about it, there's two internet direct amplifier manufacturers on the market, the main market, that are very competitive.
Yep.
And it's Outlaw and Emotiva. Now, Emotiva is a juggernaut. I mean, they're number one. They have the largest sales volume, and for good reason. They have an incredible diverse product line at good prices. Outlaw is a little bit of an underdog in this area because until this amp came out, all of their other amplifiers were a lot more expensive than the Emotiva counterparts. And they're great amps. Outlaw amps, they've all been designed by ATI Technologies, which is an incredible manufacturing company for amplifiers. They do Levinson amps. I mean, expensive Levinson amps. But Outlaw was unable to really get their prices down because they were building their amps in America. Well, this boy, not built in America, not built by ATI. They went overseas. They got the price down to where it needed to be competitive. And
well, the question then becomes, where did they go? Because it says over here, made in the PRC.
Yeah, I didn't even know what PRC meant. I had to look it up. It's, I found that's just a coy way of not saying China, because China has kind of a negative connotation.
Okay.
So it's the People's Republic of China.
Got it.
Same place where Emotiva is doing their amps, where Apple's building their iPhone. Most of the audio industry is manufacturing in China.
Yeah,
I mean, even Revel speakers that people regard those are built in Malaysia. But the point of the matter is, all this stuff is shipped overseas. I mean, that's how they're getting the prices down.
Right.
So yeah, this is made in China, just like most of the Emotiva amps were. Interestingly enough, Emotiva is moving to America now with their manufacturing. So I'm kind of wondering to see how the prices are going to change.
That's interesting. It's an interesting move.
Yeah. But right now, for $699, you don't really have, Outlaw doesn't really have any competition. Emotiva used to have the UPA series, but those have been recently discontinued. And I'm sure that now that this amp is out, that Emotiva is probably going to revitalize the UPA or refresh it or something.
More than likely.
Because Outlaw's a lone wolf right now.
Yeah.
So, you want me to tell you why this is such a unique amp at the price point?
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What can you tell us about the power and things like that,
Well, it's rated at 120 watts a channel, all channels driven, full bandwidth. One thing I love about Outlaw is they do fully disclose power ratings. They don't BS, man. I mean, their products are solid. Even their speaker line, everything, they give you a lot of the information that you don't get from a lot of their competitors.
Right.
So the 120 watts, all channels driven, full bandwidth. A lot of receivers, for example, they only rate 2 channels driven or at 1 kilohertz to give the inflated power levels. Well, when I opened this thing up and I saw it had a huge transformer, I don't know the exact size of the power transformer, but it looks like a 1 kVA, and some big heat sinking area, 4 output devices per channel. I'm like, this thing is going to bench over 120 watts. I could feel it. I could pick up an amp and tell you if it's going to outperform.
Yeah, it's a heavy one.
Yeah, just like you could assess if a guy's going to be able to lift heavy weight or not. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one thing I like about Outlaw here is they didn't overinflate, they underinflated. Because on the bench, I measured 135 watts a channel, all 5 channels driven, full bandwidth, not the 1 kilohertz crap that most of the print magazines do. We do full barrage of tests here. And it put well over 200 and something watts. You got to look at our power table in our review, into 4 ohms. So it's stable in 4 ohms. It doesn't quite double down, but it does do quite amount of output in 4 ohms. It's stable, and the amp runs cool. Like I said, the heat sinking, there's 1 heat sink per channel, and there's a central large power supply, but then there's a capacitor bank for each channel.
Okay. How about the power going through those caps?
Well, that's an interesting point. When I looked at this thing, and Outlaw claimed there was 27,000 microfarads per channel, and I looked, there was 4 capacitors per channel. Then I'm looking, I'm like, these little caps are 50 volt rated. you can't do 120 watts with 50 volts.
Okay.
Now, the rest of the press would just ignore that and say, oh, wow, it's got 27,000 microfarads a channel. But, you know, you and I are not like that, man. I like to look at the inner workings of stuff. So I looked at it and I realized these are wired in series parallel.
Okay.
Now, do you remember your amplifier technology classes back at USF?
I sure do.
When you series parallel connect 4 capacitors in this case, the equivalent capacitor is only going to be the same as 1 capacitor.
Exactly.
If they're all the same rating, which they are. So what they did, they had to do series parallel to get the working voltage higher.
Right.
So the equivalent working voltage now is 100 volts at 6,800 microfarads per channel. Now, I'm not trying to beat them up too hard. I'm just trying to be, you know, since they're so accurate in disclosing the power spec, why don't we just be fully accurate in everything?
And transparent, yeah.
Transparent, yeah. I mean, it just goes a long way. So, you know, we did some calculations because that's what we like to do. And, you know, to maintain a ripple voltage of 10%, which is good, you need about 6,000, 7,000 microfarads a channel. So, I mean, they're right in the ballpark. All the parts here are good. You know, they're using good quality parts to give you good power. And it didn't surprise me why we got such good power ratings.
Okay. Do you find any problems with it?
Well, you know, to pick nits, yeah, on the bench, real world, I didn't hear any problems. You know, I didn't hear any ground loop issues. But on the bench, when I plugged into my Audio Precision, I was getting massive ground loop issues. Spikes at 60 hertz and harmonics after that. And then I looked around and I realized, you know, because of the way they did some of their grounding scheme, they didn't have a chassis, a central chassis ground.
Okay.
And I recommended that they put this on their next generation or wherever they start shipping now. I think Peter Tribeman said they're going to start putting them on the ones that are shipping now. So when I tied my chassis ground here to the vent, to my Audio Precision, the grounding problem pretty much went away.
Okay.
Except for like on the left channel, there was a little bit residual noise because it's so close to the power transformer. And just the way they did the wire harnesses, I mean, you get a little leakage from the inductance from the transformer. So, you know, it's not something you're going to hear in the real world. I tested with the left channel. It sounded fine. But what I do recommend if you're really anal retentive, don't use the channel identification that they show you here. Use the left channel as a surround channel instead, and go from the other side of the amp for your left and right channels that are better isolated, if you're really that anal retentive about it. And you should be good to go. Now, the cool thing I like about this amp is for $699, you know, if you buy a receiver that has preamp outs for about $1,000, you're not going to get the kind of meaty high current amplifier that you're going to get here, especially if you're driving a 4-ohm speaker. And then you might say, well, yeah, but then you're going to waste the amps in your receiver. Well, not necessarily, because if you buy like the new Denon, for example, the 5200 that we reviewed,
right,
that's a 9-channel receiver.
Yes.
It's a decent amp, but it's not that great at 4 ohms. So what I would recommend, if, you know, for this amount of money, it's next to nothing, you hook this up for your main channels. If you have some big towers, you can even use this in a bi-amp mode for your towers. You can't bridge the amp. You can't double the power. It doesn't have that ability. But because the power supply is so big, you could actually use 4 channels of this to bi-amp your front channels. So if you got some massive towers and you still want to use the amps internal to your receiver, use this to bi-amp your front towers. You know, if you got active drivers, you know, bass drivers in there, use 1 pair of channels for the bass drivers and the other pair of channels for the mids and highs, and you still have 1 channel left over if you want to play with the center channel or whatever. You could still use the amplifiers in your receiver for the surround channels and for your other zones.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so I mean, you're getting good power here. You're getting it to use it for your main channels. You're getting it to you're taking the pressure off of your receiver, because let's face it, receivers don't have the power supplies that dedicated separate amps do.
No.
The age of the super mega receiver is over.
Yeah, I would think so.
So now, because you're getting Dolby Atmos and you're getting all these features, a lot of gimmicky features you're adding to it, all this licensing fees you're paying for these receivers now, the power supply keeps shrinking.
As a result, we need more power.
We need more power, Captain. So yeah, use it for that. You know, it delivers gobs of powers. I ran this amp on my $50,000 Status acoustic speakers, and they dipped down to 2 ohms at 50 hertz. My speakers are not an easy load to drive. And I punished this amplifier. I used some Japanese drums, which had, you know, massive amounts of energy bursts during the bass.
I've heard those.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to blow smoke up you guys. It's not going to sound like a 2 kilowatt monoblock like our reference amps. It's not going to give you the infinite dynamics. But it never complained. It never sounded ill. And quite frankly, I tested this beyond what the normal person is going to use a $700 amp for, or a $600 amp, I'm sorry. And I'm telling you, this thing has got gobs of power, especially if you're going to use bass management. You're never going to run into a situation where you're going to have a problem with power.
That's awesome.
With this amp. And its sound quality is really good. You know, it's clean, good channel separation. You can see in our crosstalk measurements. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the design. For a budget amp, you know, it's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, especially now. It is the only one.
Yeah, and you know what's cool is Outlaw's offering this deal where if you get this amp with their processor, the 975, you do the whole combo for like around $1,000. So
that's really
good.
good.
$100 off of the processor.
Awesome.
Plus shipping. They don't include shipping. Emotiva includes shipping with their amps, but these guys don't. So that's something, you know, you got to consider as well.
Right. You got to do your price analysis and play a little bit with the shopping cart.
Yes.
Okay.
So for under $700, you're getting quite a deal on an amp here, and you know, that's all I can think about saying about it.
Yeah. Awesome, Gene. Well, with that said, you know, great job teaching us about this amp. And also feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and then click like and let us know what you think below about this video and on any other videos that you would like us to go ahead and cover. All right. Until next time, keep listening.